Hi, I'm Shan Wu with a Under Color of Law hot take on the fracturing of the Supreme Court. It's fracturing in several different ways. Let's start with the surreptitious recording made of Justice Alito when he was at the Supreme Court Historical Society dinner. We'll put up this article about it. So a journalist, Lauren Windsor, approached Alito at the Historical Society dinner. Now, this is not some hidden secret recording where he's in private only talking to his family or friends. He is in public. He just happens to think that he's among allies, and so he speaks his mind. Take a quick listen.
Hi, I wanted to say hello to you again. My name's Lauren. I met you last year. I think you already met So, anyway, I wanted to tell you, my husband wanted to be here, but they lost him a business thing. And just like, make sure that you tell Justice Alito that like, he is a fighter and we appreciate him and he has all the grit, and I know it's got to be terrible what you and your family are going through right now, so I'm just so sorry.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
But, and I'm sure you don't remember this at all, but what I had asked you about was about the polarization in this country, about like, how do we repair that rift? And considering everything that's been going on in the past year, you know, as a Catholic and as someone who like really cherishes my faith, I don't know that we can negotiate with the left in the way that like needs to happen for the polarization to end. I think that it's a matter of like winning.
I think you're probably right. I mean, one side or the other is going to win. I don't know. I mean, there can be a way of working, a way of living together peacefully, but it's difficult, you know, because there are differences on fundamental things that really can't be compromised. They really can't be compromised. So it's not like we're going to split the difference.
And that's what I'm saying. I think that the solution really is like winning the moral argument. Like, people in this country who believe in God have got to keep fighting for that, to return our country to a place of godliness.
Oh, I agree with you.
Because we look at like...
So what I want to point out about that is the way he says, quote, one side or the other is going to win. And also, quote, fundamental things can't be compromised. It's not like we're going to split the difference. Windsor's sort of baiting him, says, you know, we should return the country to a place of godliness. And he says, I agree with you. Now, let's contrast that a little bit to also her trying to goad Chief Justice Roberts into saying something more incriminating. But Roberts kind of keeps up the facade. So take a listen to what Roberts has to say here.
I did want to ask you, like, specifically, like, with everything that's going on right now, it just... You know, it's a very tumultuous time in the country, and I'm just curious, like, from your perspective on the court, like, how do we start to repair the polarization?
Well, I mean, the first thing I think is to tell me when the non-tumultuous time has been here. I mean, you look at the court, what the court was doing in the 60s, what the court was doing during the New Deal, what the court was doing after Dred Scott and all this. It's kind of a regular thing. People think it's so different and special. It's been pretty tumultuous for a long time.
So you think this is a normal period?
You know, I don't know if it's normal. I mean, since I've been here 20 years, there have been quieter times. But the idea that the court is in the middle of a lot of tumultuous stuff going on, that's nothing new.
I guess I wouldn't say that it's not...
Now, Roberts goes on to say that there have been other tumultuous times. That's his big emphasis. Hey, it's nothing so weird here. We've had tumultuous times before. He references tumultuous times following the Civil War, Vietnam War, and I think as part of his role in trying to keep up this facade of the Supreme Court not deciding the country's social, philosophical, religious daily life, he rejects Windsor's assertion that the court should guide the country to a more moral path. He says that the court is just deciding cases. He also pushes back when she tries to bait him by saying we live in a Christian nation. He cites his Muslim and Jewish friends. So good for him. I mean, that's pretty standard boilerplate about what you would expect a judge, much less a Supreme Court justice, to say in public when they're being questioned. Now, the first thing I want to point out is his idea that this is not such an overly tumultuous time for the court or for the country, because it's not really a question of there being tumultuous times. It's not like there's a big movement going on, civil rights movement in the 60s, or a war, Vietnam War, that's forcing the court to confront tough issues. I mean, there are issues like that right now, but that's not where the tumultuous nature is arising from. The problems, the divide, the controversy is really coming from the justices themselves. They're the ones causing the tumultuous times. They've been overturning precedent to further a conservative life agenda, seeking a return to some gauzy vision they may have of a, quote, better, more Christian America. And also, of course, the tumultuousness is caused by the blatant look of corruption in justices accepting and not reporting extraordinarily luxurious gifts, allowing a man like Justice Clarence Thomas to really live the lifestyles of the rich and famous. Again, that's tumultuousness caused by them. On the Thomas issue, which is the gifts, friends with benefits to a really large extent of benefits, just take a quick look at this little laundry list that Senator Sheldon Whitehouse has laid out. So putting aside this sort of fake tumultuous times rap by Roberts, just look at what his remarks vis-a-vis Alito's remarks reveals. The schism between Roberts' view versus Alito is much more than a schism. It's a freaking chasm. Alito thinks there's one side that's going to win the religious and moral war, and there can be no compromise. You know, that's much in the style of Trump's advisor and fellow convicted felon, Steve Bannon. Take a listen to Bannon at a recent little clip before he goes to jail.
Between now and Election Day, they're going to try to take out so many people. And that's where it's next man up, it's next woman up. Are you prepared to fight? Are you prepared to give it all? Are you prepared to leave it all on the battlefield? I can't hear you, and they can't hear you. Ladies and gentlemen, it's very simple. Victory or death.
Victory or death. Notice how Bannon's invoking a phrase that reminds us of give me liberty or give me death, the phrase of Patrick Henry, the American revolutionary lawyer and founding father. You know, my emphasis is on the word revolutionary there. We often forget that the founding fathers and mothers were revolutionaries. They were rebelling against England, not just dispassionately sitting around in a political science seminar or a lofty legal discussion, which is the atmosphere that Chief Justice Roberts wants to suggest is what's happening at the Supreme Court. Roberts' charade masks the successful revolution that has been mounted in American jurisprudence through the radicalization of the law, the kind of radicalization that allows the confident move by the Louisiana Republican governor and legislatures to pass a law that requires the 10 Commandments to be displayed in every single public school classroom in Louisiana. That's a flagrant violation of the established precedent regarding the Establishment Clause, which bars, it's in the Constitution, bars the state from establishing a religion. Now, notice I say the precedent, because there isn't actually anything written in the Constitution that talks about posting anything in classrooms for obvious reasons. But when this case eventually comes to the Supreme Court, and it will, watch for how that precedent will be jeopardized through the use of originalist analysis from justices like Alito and Thomas, who argue exactly that. The Constitution doesn't say anything about putting up religious commandments in the classroom, so it's not going to violate the Constitution. Now, just how far gone is this radicalization of jurisprudence and the court? It's so far gone that even another right Supreme Court justice, some would say radical right Supreme Court justice, Justice Amy Coney Barrett, seems uncomfortable with some of the analysis being done. In a concurring opinion on a trademark case, which was authored by Justice Thomas, she criticizes his analysis, which is very much based in the so-called originalism. And she says, quote, originalism, she's referencing, it, quote, presents tradition itself as the constitutional argument. Yet what is the theoretical justification for using tradition that way? That's something she wrote in her concurrence. And her next critique amounts to fighting words among legal conservatives. She compared Thomas's approach to the kind of amorphous, multi-pronged legal tests that conservatives frequently accuse liberal judges of concocting. She says, quote, relying exclusively on history and tradition may seem like a way of avoiding judge-made tests, but a rule rendering tradition dispositive is itself a judge-made test. That's quite true. Put that up from the Political article that was doing this analysis. Now, I'm telling you about that not to say that Coney Barrett is going to be somehow a potential savior for the court's swing to the right. No, I'm pointing out to show just how fractured the court is right now. It's fissured not only in its morality, but also in its judicial ethics, and now also in its analysis. When it suits her, Coney Barrett, whether intentionally or unintentionally, is going to use originalism. She just thinks that she's a better analyst than is Thomas, who tends to be sort of reckless. A little bit of a generational issue going on here too. These sort of young Turks that have come up, Kavanaugh and Gorsuch and Coney Barrett, they're very young minds, really at the peak of their intellectual capacity, and they're thinking very sharply. And even though they've been put there through a conservative groundswell, they don't have necessarily the arrogance or the recklessness of somebody like Thomas, who's been on there for such a long time. And she may be reacting to that as well. But this kind of fissuring in the court really shows that it's really in a state of collapse at this point. You know, it's often quoted and talked about that the Chinese character for word, or the word for crisis, is a combination of the characters for crisis and opportunity. But we need to remember, before there can be that opportunity, we all need to be very clear about the fact that there is a crisis going on. So that's it for now. Thanks for watching. And again, really appreciate you sending the replies and the comments. It really helps me think about what to cover next. And I may not often get to reply to everybody's, but rest assured, I'm looking at them. Thanks for watching.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Midas by signing up to the MeidasTouch newsletter at MeidasTouch.com/newsletter.